Welcome to today's episode of WooNews TV, where we bring spiritual concepts into the mainstream. Have you noticed conflict in your life? We all have conflict in our lives, right? It's just kind of a normal part of life. But have you noticed more conflict lately with friends, family, even strangers? Have you noticed some of the conflict going on in our nation, in society? It varies on how divided we truly are in our lives. However, conflict is something we can all relate to. And today we're going to talk about how to resolve conflict and even prevent conflict from happening. Today is my guest, ShaRon Rea. Hello, ShaRon. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Julie. Hello, everyone. Good morning.
I'm going to read a little bit about what ShaRon has written in her bio here, because I think it's important. I don't always read bios on this show, but this one I think is needs to be shared. ShaRon Rea is on a serious mission to make the world a better place as creator of the global movement, No Judgment, Just Love. She knows that judgments are human and we judge all the time. Her message is meant to encourage people to practice no judgment, just love, which is, quote, choosing to move beyond judgments that divide to consciously lead with love in your thoughts, words, and actions. This will genuinely help us relate to each other better, unquote. In her work as the No Judgment, Just Love coach, her joy and purpose is to educate people and inspire people to create deeper connections with themselves so they can build relationships with others that are filled with love, respect, and cooperation. The success formula is making your life extraordinary begins with you. One of my favorite quotes is nothing changes until you do. And that's exactly what you just said.
Yes, absolutely. And we don't know that most of
No.
the time. It's a new concept, I think.
And it's also, I think, hard for people to actually want to own that too, because it
Oh,
really all
yes.
comes down to you, doesn't it?
It does.
So ShaRon, let's talk about, tell us about the No Judgment, Just Love movement. Let's start with that. What is it? How did it come to life?
Okay, excellent. I, about 12 years ago, left my numerous jobs and decided to become a life coach. And in that space, I wanted to focus on families because there are a lot of life coaches for people and sports and all of those things. But families, I believe, really need some help, focusing on parents in particular. So in that space, I wanted people to be able to come to me and not feel scratchy like you do in life, where you'd be judged and you're doing this wrong and that wrong. So I wanted to have a foundation of acceptance when clients came to me. At the same time, in Arizona, which is where I am, there was legislation happening. I used to be a lobbyist for a number of years in New York, so I pay attention to government. I actually like government. Yes. And so this new law that was being talked about was going to discriminate against a group of people. And I felt really strong about which side of that discussion I was on. And somehow it came to me, those four words: no judgment, just love. And what I thought was, what a perfect tag for my coaching. But if I'm going to use it from my perspective, I have to be it. And so here was an example where I had to figure out how to give less judgment to the side that I vehemently disagreed with. Mm-hmm. And what I found was I could not find it in this earthly discussion, as a human. I had to rise up to my spiritual place and see things as Source sees things in a more global way. And from that perspective, I was able to see, believe it or not, the value of the other side, which caused—
Boy, we need that right now.
And, it's all my own discussion. I don't lie to myself, so I wasn't making up a fairy tale story about them. I genuinely found a way to see the value of something I disagreed with. And what I came up with was, we need contrast in this world. If we're all the same without contrast, it's hard to know if you're really happy or sad, or things working or not working. So I found value, even though I didn't agree with the other side, in helping me affirm that I had a voice.
Well, that's beautiful. I want to talk a little bit about the current state of things. And I wanted to have ShaRon on this show. I think this is a timely message, but it's also a timeless message. And this is so important. And it really gives us a solution to how to stay out of the conflict and to see the bigger picture of things and to create unified opposition.
Yes.
I believe is what we ultimately should strive for, is unified opposition. And I'm not just talking about politically or with the virus or all these things that are, you know, currently in 2022 still creating a lot of conflict, but in your own life, in your relationships with family, friends. And some of these issues going on nationally are certainly impacting people's conflict with people closest to them,
Yeah,
as well. But it will allow us to see strangers, as you were talking about in your example, in a completely different light as well.
exactly. Right? Absolutely. Because even though people are strange,
And that song's going to be in my head.
And they're unknown to us,
right?
They're still human and they're here on the planet. And so if you can move your thoughts to that and become willing to embrace this idea, this ideal that I'm offering to you, your life will change.
Well, another thing, I was talking to ShaRon prior to this interview, and I said, you know, I and she agreed. We don't want this to be a kumbaya kind of approach, you know, that it can be. Yeah, there is an element to that, but it is a real nuts and bolts, tangible, nitty gritty, get into the dirt of your stuff kind of approach that you can apply. And
Yes.
then it not only betters you, but it has impact across the board. Let's talk about why we judge. Let's talk about that. And then we'll bring it back to, you know, what's going on.
Sure.
And why do we judge self and others? Because it's not just others we're judging, you know,
exactly.
And there's a mirror we just talked about. When you're judging others, you're judging yourself.
You know, first thing I want to say to everyone loud and clear, I'm going to say it twice. So in case you missed it the first time, I'll say it again. There is nothing wrong with judging. It is how we move around our world. We judge all the time.
Well, because we're always told, don't judge, don't judge.
I know, you have to judge. Otherwise, you become a bot, you know, where you just move around without consciousness. But we judge. So my initial message, and I can't have that in all the 4 words, I'm just trying to give you, you know, a tickler to know this. But please, there is no judgment even on the judging.
Okay. Okay. So
why we judge, to me, is a product of our upbringing. It's a product, what we have agreed is our circumstance as we move around the world. It is our assumptions about certain things. It is the total definition of how we maneuver in the world. We judge so that we can make sure we cross the street without being hit by a car. We judge so we can feel connected to people. You know, are you thinking and acting in a way that pleases me or doesn't upset me? That's a judgment. And the opposite is a judgment. So judgments aren't the problem. The problem becomes what you do after you've made that judgment. And it's difficult for us in this fast moving microwave, hurry up and answer world to take a pause.
Yes, very much so.
we don't.
She's pausing. She stopped talking. What do I do? She's pausing.
I know.
Okay.
Exactly.
She's pausing for effect.
So we want to fill it up with something.
Right.
And the value of pausing, if you must fill it up with something, because pausing leads into meditative, which leads into more different conversation. But if you must fill it up with inquisitive nature. Okay. Why did I judge? What caused me to make a judgment about ShaRon's background? What caused me to make a judgment about my little one?
Meaning, I mean, this is for clarity, not this.
Yeah.
Meaning, so if I judged you, what is in me? What is the belief? What is the program in me that caused me to judge ShaRon? What is the inadequacy, the jealousy, the less than in me that caused me to judge ShaRon? Is that what you're talking about?
That's exactly what I'm talking about. And I want to have everyone think about the advantage of both, all the sides of judgment. It's not just because we only think of judgment often as something negative or bad or it's horrible. The other part of judgment is, oh, I really like that dress that she's wearing. That's a judgment,
Okay. Oh,
but it's on
girls,
the
wow,
positive side.
there's a lot to unpack there. Okay.
And so, in our judgments, they come from us, like Julie and I talked about at the beginning. Everything in your world emanates from you. And so I can see three people walking down the street and judge them in three different ways than you do, based on your culture, based on your upbringing, based on your assumptions, all of those things.
Even your mood, I think.
Even in your mood.
In that moment, your
Exactly.
mood, right? Yeah.
Yeah, 2 days ago, I had the time with Julie, and the next day I was like just pissy with everything that happened.
All right.
And that's not my usual nature. I'm kind of zen and calm and things flow. But I was like, what is going on? So I paused and I reflected on what had happened yesterday. Why is this upsetting me? And, so I had a little conversation with myself.
Okay. So it's about practicing part of which we'll get to. Part of the key to this is to practice what you just said, pausing and doing a little self-check.
Yeah. And it begins with, please be human, judge,
Yeah.
but know that judgments are not always negative. They're useful. They could be positive. They could be benign. It's what we do. It's how we make sense of our world. So do that. And then when you do that, if you find that it's kind of a judgment you wouldn't want to continue to make, or you're even unaware, still take that pause and discern.
If it's something you're considering, if it's a negative judgment and you're considering acting on it, or if it's a judgment that could cause some distress to another human, pause before you act on it. I heard it once said, I thought it was brilliant, because all of this ultimately comes down to unconditional love, which is the highest vibration that exists, the highest vibration of source. So for the spiritual perspective, that's what the root of this conversation is. And I heard it said, to love unconditionally doesn't mean loving without discernment.
Correct.
I can love you unconditionally as a human to human, spark of source, God creator, spark of source, God creator. But if you are murdering children, I can discern that I don't really want to be around you.
That's my
okay.
message. You just stated my message clearly. No judgment, just love is unconditional, is the way I term it, unconditional allowance. So I've replaced love, because love has so many different images for everyone. So I love to use it because I want us to get back to the purity of love.
Right.
But in defining this message, I came up with unconditional allowance, which to me means allowing yourself and everyone else to be exactly where they are at any moment in time. Go ahead and judge. But like Julie said, if this is not in your best interest or theirs to be near them, love them from afar.
It's like radical acceptance kind of too.
Yes.
There's a Course in Miracles, if anyone is familiar with that. Are you familiar with the Course in Miracles? Okay.
I am.
They talk about there are literally two things in the world, love and fear. Anything that is not love is fear. Anything that causes distress of any kind or suffering of any kind or anxiety, anything that is not calm, peaceful connection, generosity is fear. It's that simple. Okay. Anything that's distressful is fear. So when we're talking about love, tell me if this is where you're coming from, ShaRon. It's about that. It's not, again, the kumbaya thing. It's about choosing the love emotion over the fear emotion, choosing the love over the fear. And again, and fear is ego. It's the separation. Love is complete connection to source. Therefore, we're connected to everyone. We realize we're connected to everyone. When we're in ego, we feel the separation to other people, which is another reason why we judge and therefore act on those judgments, right? Because we see ourselves as separate. I'd love to know your thoughts on what I'm rambling about here.
Yeah, no ramble. It's total clarity.
And fear is about the ego, and doesn't mean it's bad. It's just we live in a realm of duality. I say this all the time. The earth realm is a realm of duality for us to see this contrast and to just choose to be on the path of the journey home back to source, where we are not separate. So that's what this realm is about, is we have free will to recognize if we want to do that, to recognize the duality and choose to move back, to take the journey home, which is where there is no ego, there is no separation, there is no fear.
Well, I want to add to that because I agree with just about everything you said. And in this, because no judgment, just love for me is a practice. It's not like just do it and you stand it out there and it's there and it stands there. You have to actually do it to just do it.
Well, let's talk about that.
From 19. Yeah.
It's a good segue. Talk about how we start this practice. And then I would love for you to share, if you're comfortable, an example of not only when you judged and what you did with that, and when you were judged.
Oh, goodness.
That can also create a judgment and, et cetera. So how do you move into that NJJL, no judgment, when you are being judged?
Okay, so that's a lot. The first thing I want to start with is ego. So in my space of being the carrier of this message, the deliverer of this message, the inspirer of this, I spend an inordinate amount of time pausing through my day, thinking about what that means, how to live it, how to share it with other people. And Julie preempted this with a question about ego. So this morning I spent some time thinking about ego, and I came away with, it's not always negative.
Right.
It's not always what we think of as a thing we have to crush and disregard. Your ego, in my view, this is my view, is part of you. It's part of your personality. And if we are on our journey back home, every part of our personality, whether it's here or with source, is a loving part. We've just attached a definition to
a judgment.
A judgment. So instead of just pushing that aside, take a pause and evaluate. Okay, was I in balance with my ego? Is that my ego trying to help me with something that I've overcome already? So it's a historical safety net that I no longer need, which causes me to have a conversation with myself and say, ego, thank you so much. You worked really hard for a long time to keep us in what we thought was going to be safe. But I've evolved from that. So we're going to try and give you a different job, but you don't have to do that one anymore. Yes, I do talk to myself.
It's when we answer ourselves that it gets a little bit concerning.
Exactly.
So being aware of the ego, appreciating ego, is part of the practice of no judgment.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because what I've discovered in the awareness and the confirmation for me that I matter, that I am in control of my life. I'm the director, I'm the star, I'm the set designer, everything. I want to make sure I'm not hurting me. I'm not saying things to me that are going to cause my personality, my self-esteem to get crushed. This is work because there are a lot of things in my head that do that already. But once I uncover one that isn't in concert with me loving me without judgment as much as I can, I work to dissipate that.
Okay, so that's another aspect of practicing, because nothing changes until you do.
Exactly.
So as you judge yourself less, you judge others less?
Well, you can't give what you don't have. So the legislature story that I told you about how no judgment, just love came to be for me, which is that I found value in the side of a conversation that I didn't agree with. Similarly, with all of the horrible behavior I see in our world, United States, my town, I see the value of that to show us, those of us who are paying attention, those of us who are aware, this is not who we are, but it is who we are right now. But this is not who we want to be. Yes.
Okay, this is getting really heady.
Okay, so let's come back down.
No, but I understand why, because there's so many layers to judging and to judgment, and judgment is fine. Judgment's okay. Judgment's normal. Judging something positive, judging something negative. So would you say that it starts with the pause, the power of the pause, and then your
Foundation, your intention that no judgment, just love is not saying you don't judge.
Right.
And then your discernment about what you're going to do with that.
Okay. Okay. So practicing the pause, finding. That's how we practice this. No judgment, just love.
Yes. And you don't usually practice as you're driving and walking around. Do you take a moment in your morning, or take a moment in your evening, or take a moment at lunch and just spend a minute or two going, okay, what just happened this morning? Why was I upset at that cashier?
I'm making a note here, so forgive me for looking down.
You know.
For me, it seems that our emotions create a physical response. That's how we understand what our emotions are, what our feelings are telling us. How we recognize our feelings is find out the physical, where they are in your body and all of that. So I would imagine judgment has a specific feeling as well. Might be vary for everybody else, but so would you suggest that discovering the physical sensation when you are judging would help you recognize when you're judging?
Yes, and a little something different, because in my work with parenting, I've learned that your brain connects by repetition. And your brain doesn't have feelings. Your brain is like a computer. What you put in over time, it says, I got that, and spits it back out. So yes, in general, your feelings are your God-given, creator-given barometer of how to move through your life. However, if you have over and over and over let fear or anger or resentment click into your brain, you may think that you're getting high vibes from that because you're accustomed to that. So your feeling will say, yeah, I need to curse this person out because I cursed the last 10 people out. And that felt good because I've been hurt. And so now I have revenge, and revenge feels good.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense. Okay. So
that's why I align with what Julie said. If you are willing to experiment with this, one of the things to experiment with is to ask yourself, is what I'm doing after I felt that feeling, and the feeling felt good to me, am I doing something hurtful, harmful, or helpful?
Okay, so when I judge, now I'm aware enough now, more often than not, perhaps not every time, I feel it right here in my throat.
Okay.
Here, I can feel that. So it's a matter of me pausing and recognizing that when I am judged, I feel it here more severely.
Yes.
It's an amplified sensation.
Yes.
So for me, that's one of the ways I would reckon, even if I feel justified in what I'm saying, if it's a judgment, my body is going to know. My intuition is going to know.
Exactly.
If so, the more
I don't want this to be complicated for people. I really don't. But I think this is a healthy conversation, Julie, because what I know, whenever I have this opportunity to talk about it, some things will resonate with some people. One thing I say makes something click with some other people. So even though there's a broad conversation we're having, or a deep conversation we're having, there is a very simple aspect to this.
Which is?
Be you. Think what you're thinking, feel what you're feeling. When you talk with yourself inside, are you speaking kindly? Are you helpful? Or are you hurting yourself? That same direction for anything outside.
Applies to anything and everyone. Yes, it does. Okay, let's apply this to a current event, a current situation. I'm timing this talk, but again, the information is timeless. We have had this, it's August 2022 that we are recording this. And we've had COVID to deal with. And there's been division, or people are taking sides on issues now, I think more than they did before, which is good. I think people are not so apathetic anymore. They're actually becoming more aware of what's important to them, what matters to them, what's going on
Sure.
in the world. Is it jiving, et cetera, et cetera. So we have COVID. Some people approached it one way, some people approached it another way. Then there was the vaccine. Some people were very supportive, some people were very uncomfortable, opposed to it. And that has caused some conflict in families, in workplaces, in a lot of different levels. So, and to me, that's a judgment.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely.
That's how conflict is, that's how judgments are creating conflict. So
yes.
throw this approach at the vaccine, for example.
Okay, I will.
Vaccine conflict.
Unconditional allowance.
Mm.
Have whatever thought you want to have about vaccines. You don't have to voice it to me.
Okay, I agree with that completely. However, I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate.
Yes,
here, okay?
please do. This is fun.
Okay, if someone feels threatened by you because you are not getting the vaccine, or vice versa, because there's a shedding, there's two sides, with the way the world is today. For every story and their facts, there's the opposite story and their facts. So nobody really knows where to land with anything. So if I feel threatened by your choice, what do I do?
What do? You be you and
be practice no judgment.
Oh, that who wants to practice?
How do I minimize the conflict that's creating?
You have 100% control over you and everything you think and do. You have some degree less than that over anybody else. Mm-hmm. So where is the opportunity for control? It's not with telling everybody else what to do. It's with you choosing what you're going to do. If I or anyone else chose not to get vaccinated and you are concerned with that, and I'm your best friend, say to me, you know what? I'm concerned. So right now we can't be around each other.
I love you. Let's talk on the phone. I still want to have a relationship with you. I'm just not comfortable being in your physical presence right now.
Absolutely.
So there are ways to find a compromise and a happy medium and a way to be around someone in this kind of a conflict. You don't have to eliminate people from your lives, because you hear about this happening a lot.
Yeah.
Been cast aside. There's a lot of separation as a result of some things going on right now, and it's an election year right now, and there might be more of this coming down the pike. So I believe that you can have your opinion, have your stance, do what's right for you, and not eliminate that relationship. However, people are judging so harshly, saying, because you believe this, you are just not someone I want to be around.
And see, that's where the pause can come. If you are one of these people that maybe I've inspired today, and you want to try to experiment with this, does it work for you? Please give it more than once or twice before you conclude it doesn't work.
And maybe it was something not quite as heavy.
and
less significant things.
Start with whatever it's small for you.
I don't like your shoes.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I don't like your shoes.
Those shoes.
And do you need to give yourself permission to tell everybody your thoughts? You could not like my shoes, but keep it to yourself. I didn't ask for your opinion. You can not like that I'm not vaccinated or not wearing a mask or wearing a mask. That's fine. Right. But you don't have to lambaste me. Sorry for the big word. That's what just came to my head. But you don't have to tell me how disgusted you are that I'm wearing a mask. Move along.
Right. Move along. Don't impose that onto me. I also believe that if we can intuit the why someone's doing what they're doing, it can give us a broader perspective and see the bigger picture, like the why. So the why you if I'm judging you for wearing a mask, the why you're wearing a mask, you do have some health issues. It's just you are simply more comfortable doing it. There's a whole bunch of why behind that,
Absolutely.
and the compassion and the awareness.
Unconditional allowance. Yeah.
Yes, and the expanded awareness is into it why somebody might be doing what they're doing,
And you don't have to be right.
allow it. No,
You just have to find something that works for you.
Yeah.
I don't know why people do what they do. Maybe they don't even know.
but even
They're
you,
doing what
but
they're
I think
doing.
there's a general sense you can say, oh, well, maybe they're really mad at me right now. Maybe they're really angry today because of something that's going on in their personal life, or they just had a bad diagnosis or bad news. You don't have to know, but you can intuit just a regular life situation that could give you some information that can take away that judgment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Julie and I participated in a Take the Stage, which is kind of like a TED Talk. Each one of us created a conversation. Hers was outstanding because it was on intuition.
Yours was outstanding.
Okay, we were both outstanding. Good judgment there.
I'll take that one.
Yeah, but there was a story I told about when I went through a divorce, looking for a new house, found this wonderful house. Our daughters were younger, so I wanted them to come to this new house with, "Ooh, this is great, Mom." And when I got there after purchasing it and you doing your walkthrough, it was the filthiest. Bed bugs, bugs on the floor, dust, but it was just awful. And I said to my real estate person, how could someone leave the house like this? This is my final walkthrough. I was really judging and angry, and I let it out to my real estate person. And she immediately came back and said, ShaRon, you had all of this conversation. I didn't get to give you this envelope from them. The father is in the hospital fighting for his life. And here is an envelope for money to get your house cleaned because they didn't have time.
No.
Now, never would I have assumed that, but I just went off of the visual of what I thought was a disregard to me.
Right.
And so when Julie is talking about, intuit, have an idea that there's possibly another reason why a person is behaving inconsistent with what you think they should behave.
Just a human element. All you need to do is go into the human aspect of existence, and you can find something. So to recap, how to practice no judgment, just love.
Yes, the first thing to understand is the 4 words, no judgment, just love, are not asking you to not judge.
Okay.
We are human. Judge away. And if you have the moment that you do what Julie suggested, intuit where you feel this judgment, whether it's coming from you or towards you, and take a pause. And in that pause, if you have time, try to discern what was that judgment about for you, not for the other person. Everything emanates from us. And ask yourself very simply, is what I'm getting ready to say, do, or think to myself or others, will it be helpful or harmful?
Okay. I think if we practice our self-talk, if we paid more attention to our self-talk, we will be more aware of how we're talking or thinking towards others.
Exactly.
Just gets us in that mindset.
And if you can find your foundation, for me, my foundation is we all matter, because I have been disregarded and thrown away by others in their judgment. So that causes me to know that everyone from the Course in Miracles perspective is magnificent.
I'm glad you said that, because especially with this political time, everyone matters. Even if your politics are different, even if you don't agree, even if you see things differently, everyone matters, and it's all part of the whole system, and it all plays a very important role in creating this new earth and just living in this realm of earth and this human existence. Every belief matters. You don't have to like it. You don't have to agree with it. You have to, what was the word you used?
Have unconditional allowance for everyone.
Unconditional allowance. Exactly.
Unconditional. And I want to give people a little guide.
Okay.
Just small thing. So in your discernment, again, as I said at the beginning, it was hard for me watching people say and do things that were just abhorrent to me. I was like, how do you even get there to that thought? I was judging a lot.
Much less verbalize it, right?
Much less verbalize
Yeah.
it, yeah, or act upon it.
Mhm.
And so what I found is in our car, we have a GPS that helps guide us to where we need to go. And for me, I have an internal GPS to help me find the less judgment and the unconditional allowance. And that GPS is my greatest personal shift
Okay, that's
to a
good.
higher thought, to a source thought, to we all matter thought. And from there, I can see the bigger picture. I have availability to give you grace.
So use your GPS to help you
Yes.
practice no judgment, just love.
Yes, ma'am.
This is great. Okay. Any parting words you have for our audience, ShaRon?
I think that was it.
Okay, well, I
But
think that was a good one.
yes, but
I remember
please,
you talking about that in your speech, and it was powerful.
and please, we don't have to suffer in silence, and we certainly don't have to suffer out loud to people. But if you're struggling, if you're stuck, if you're inquisitive, please reach out to me. I always begin a conversation for free, just so you can get to know me a little more. I can get to know you. And my goal with any conversation I have is to leave somebody with something that they can use right away.
When I think you can help people start to recognize when they judge on the impact of it on themselves first, as well as others. And the more we can move out of judgment and the unconditional acceptance, the more we can raise the frequency of the earth
Yes,
and the collective, which is everything is energy, as I always say. And that's a higher
absolutely.
vibration. Acceptance and love is a higher vibration than judgment and fear. So as we continue to do this, we elevate our own, therefore we elevate everyone else's.
May I say one last thing that
Sure.
keeps banging in my head to say?
Sure, bang away.
Right along with what Julie said, the higher vibrations help shift our world in a way that we would like to see. The lower vibrations shift our world as well. And that's what's happening right now. So whatever vibration you are displaying, you have an effect as one person on the world. And Dr. David Hawkins, with his map of consciousness, says from his experiments and conclusions that when you can vibrate with the energies, as Julie said, of willingness, of allowance, of love, of joy, you counterbalance those people in the lower energies on our planet of fear and anger and hate. And you know how many of them you affect by your one raising your vibration? 750,000.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So never think one person doesn't have the ability to change the world.
Excellent. That was beautiful. And using your GPS is how
Yes.
you make that shift into the higher vibration in that moment. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, ShaRon, for doing this with me.
Oh, thank you so much for having me in this beautiful conversation with you and everyone who's listening.
Well, I will have all of ShaRon's information in the description of this video, so you can reach out to her and pick her brain about things and get some of her further wisdom. And I'm sure she'll be doing some interesting things in her own work soon. I won't say now because I won't put you on the spot, but stay tuned and keep your eye on ShaRon because good things are coming from her soon. Thanks so much.